checking to make sure that our audio is actually coming through.
Yay, I got it back.
Yay, you got it back. Woohoo!
For now. There's always a chance it'll
For
die
now. Ah, here we are. All right. Okay. There's the audio. Woohoo! All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Good day. It's nice to already see that we've got a handful of people here in the chat. We've got I'm Omega, Hannah Heaven, Roblox is down. Fantastic. And yes, Matterlad, if you are there, your whole thing of sending the world building in as a joke, we're going to talk about world building later because absolutely. It's amazing how many questions people have in regards to world building, and it's one of those topics that's so much fun to talk about, but it's kind of hard to say anything general about it because every story is unique. So therefore, all the world building advice that one could give is going to be slightly unique as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. I feel like.
So yeah, well, today we've got Scott here with us. Woohoo!
Woo!
We've got high time. Hafiz is here as well. Fantastic. Welcome. So let's then just do a quick rundown of what we're going to try to all cover for tonight. We are going to have a look at some of the upcoming anime for this season, and we are going to give our overviews and recommendations based off of the manga for each one of these shows. So we've got 14, 4 reoccurring, 10 new, and it's going to be awesome. Then after that, we are going to talk a little bit about world building and then see where we go from there.
It sounds like it's going to be a busy night. Let's get started.
All right, let's get started. Scott, let's see here. Oh, yeah, let's get this started properly. Since this is also partially a need for weeb installment. So without any further ado, let's dive into the returning anime for the summer season, and I have a need for weeb. All right, Scott, of the 4 that we have,
which one that for a good while now, and it's still funny.
Yeah. I have a need. So
I have a need for copious amount of caffeine. That's for sure.
Yep. And looking at my gameplay footage right here, I have a need to actually be accurate with torrent. Okay.
All right. So we've got. I mean, there's more returning anime, but these are the ones that I kind of wanted to showcase. For various reasons.
Yeah.
Going to start out with one that was surprisingly popular, did really well, and I think part of it just because of how good the opening was, is Oshinoko.
All right, Oshinoko. Let me bring that up. All right. Yeah, Oshinoko is returning. This is the one that took really took the scene by storm. With the music and with the intensity, and because it's so bright and flashy and it seems like it's going to be a great happy time, a lot of people had no idea what they were getting themselves in for with this particular show.
I do love when anime does this kind of thing where it's like super bright and energetic kind of animation and like everything, but then the world that you're like thrown into is actually like really dark and complex. And so you're having to like balance this kind of stuff. I mean, this is nowhere as like dark as Happy Sugar Life gets, but this has its own moments for sure. If you ever want to go on a road trip in your mind, yeah, Happy Sugar Life will wreck you. Just warning you.
Yep. Say let's see here. Well, if you want to go on a trip in your own mind that's not going to wreck you, watch Fooly Cooley.
Yeah, but Fooly Cooley is made to just to be fun, and like the original at least, you can tell is one of those they made to have fun. Like they had fun making that.
Oh yeah.
While with like other stuff, it's like, oh, this is just a job. We're like getting stuff done. Oshinoko, I actually feel like it's a bit of art. Like they're doing it because they want to show off how cool, like how good they can do this, and they succeeded. Like it's a very complex, interesting story. I I don't know how far I'm ever gonna get into it, partially because of some of the incest themes that come up later, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it's kind of there. It's one of those weird things because it's very clear. It's like it takes some of the conundrums of a reincarnation story kind of to the next level because they're very clearly different souls in new bodies, but those are bodies that are related to each other. It's
Yep.
like, like it's like I can see the connection, but I don't like it. I don't like it.
I mean, I feel like, and I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I feel like there is something to be said to like the different kind of moral grounding that like Japan has a culture versus like the West has a culture that can like influence a bit of that, but still,
it's still
like you'd think incest is one of those things that anybody with access to history would catch on to.
Yeah, but hey, we're not related spiritually, so it's like,
Ew,
no, stop that,
no,
stop that, no,
let's not.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to just take a quick moment to kind of get on a little soapbox right here.
Oh shoot.
So Oshinoko is definitely a show that I feel like you need to really kind of be in the zone for. Like you need to prepare yourself for a fun ride, a very colorful ride with some very engaging, gripping characters, but that it's not going to leave you feeling on like on an intellectual or emotional high afterwards. That is not what Oshinoko does to you. So it's definitely one of those shows that I would say if you come at it from a more mature perspective, you're gonna have a lot of fun. But if you're not really there, then I would not, like, for instance, I would not recommend this to younger viewers. Even though I know a lot of younger viewers have seen it, it's not something that I myself would go on my way to recommend. And the popularity of Oshinoko flies in the face of what a lot of people here in the States have been saying recently. That just kind of grinds my gears, where they're like, yeah, the Japanese are telling all of these great traditional family stories with traditional values. I feel like I can show it to my kids and everything's totally fine. I'm like, what anime have you been watching? Have you just been watching Sailor Moon? Because if you've just been watching Sailor Moon, okay, I totally get that. If you're talking about any of the newer stuff, we need to have a chat. Because, for one thing, Japan's cultural values and traditional values are not America's. No way, no how. Don't try to conflate the two.
Yeah, but I also feel like there's always something to learn, good or bad. Like looking at the different stuff. It doesn't matter what you're watching. Like there's always, I mean, it's a story. That's where stories started out. There's some sort of moral lesson hidden in something or another, even
Mhm.
if it's just the tropes that are being played out.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I feel like there's a bit of that.
Well,
But yeah,
and here's the thing: it's like what I'm not even trying to say that like Japanese values are wrong or anything, but it's just that if you got it's like for some people are like, yeah, if you want traditional good family values, which is something I just heard a week ago. A week ago, I'm like, what are we talking about here? I'm like, I don't think you've actually been watching any anime, buddy. Which there are good family anime out there, but when this guy is drawing on stuff like Attack on Titan, I'm like, no, you just enjoy the blood and the violence and the great animation for Attack on Titan. It's okay if you like that, but let's get everything in the right box to make
right.
sense.
True. I, I do again really love the music. I mean, the opening is absolutely fantastic, but honestly, my favorite is that ending. And I normally don't get into the endings because the endings are usually a lot slower, a lot um less interesting in my opinion. But
Oh,
the
I love
ending for
it.
this one by Queen Bee is
Hmm.
so good. So beautiful.
Yeah, I'm expecting this anime to again take TikTok by storm,
Yeah.
with everyone trying to replicate all the cool stuff that they're doing, and putting the music to use. Something from Hannah Heaven right here. I see. I'm a younger viewer and I love shows that are mature like these, and that's the and that's totally fine. I'm just saying that me myself and I if I know really who I'm recommending a story to, then I try to find what I know will work best for them. But like if I were back still as a teacher talking to my high school students, Oshi no Ko would be something that I would only like recommend to someone that a student of mine that I'm like, okay, then your your head's in the right space. You will appreciate this. You're not just so what's the next My Hero Academia?
All right, let's move on to our next one. So
With,
Lars is going to explode on this one. I'm just warning everybody about this. But we're going to talk about the next season of Tower of God. And if you've been on
oh,
this channel long enough, you've seen just a lot of hate that Lars has for that
well,
story.
here's the thing. I actually enjoyed Tower of God at the beginning. And then I got far enough in the manhwa that I was just like, oh no, no, you idiot, why? Oh, there's so this okay. The arc that is being adapted for this season is arguably the best arc, at least of everything that I've read. It's pretty good. It's got there's some good political intrigue, personal intrigue. There's a lot of interesting puzzle solving and battles that go into this. And, like it's one of the better battle royales that I have seen. I mean, after this particular arc, oh, it takes such a nosedive, and it doesn't make and like you begin to realize time doesn't make any sense. Power levels don't make any sense. Space doesn't make any sense. Character motivations don't make any sense. Time skips are used in the absolute worst ways possible in order for the author to reset everything that they did because they wrote themselves into a flippin' corner with every subsequent arc. It is stupid.
Preach.
So this season is going to be really good. Everything after this is downhill unless the anime seriously deviates from the source material. It's just
Mm-hmm. And I do have to be clear, it's something Need for Weeb has always been, but we're we're authors in our own right. Not well, Lars is published. I'm not. And so that's kind of like the stance we take, like kind of where we come at a lot of these stories from. But overall, this is an opinion piece. If you absolutely love any of these stories that we're constantly bashing on, more power to you. That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But Tower of God is not my cup of tea, and I don't think it ever will be.
and I understand why.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Battle Royale stories in the first place. I feel like they're kind of... It's a very simple way to create drama and to add like actual nuance to it is... It kind of like ruins the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how to
say. Yeah, I'm Omega. Please share your out of pocket recommendations with us and with the chat. But I let's say when it comes to a battle royale type story, like one of the best way, like for instance, basically the movie Gladiator. If we're going to be honest about it, Gladiator has a battle royale element to it, with Maximus trying to survive all of these different opponents, traps, and schemes in order to get his revenge on the Emperor. But the Gladiator aspect, all of these different fights that he is in, are just the mechanisms by which he's able to get closer to the Emperor. You have the world building, the politicking, you have the characters, you have their schemes, you have their motivations, the fact that all of these slaves they want something out of this. They were taken away from something that they loved, and now they're put into this awful situation, and Maximus is the only one who can get them through it. It like that makes the story actually really interesting and worth it. Otherwise, you're just there for 4 or 5 scenes of really cool action, but that action loses all purpose without the context, which is about the characters. Right. When it comes to something like Tower of God, the problem, and this definitely becomes an issue later on in the story, is that for the main characters, it's hard to know anymore what they actually want, because by the 4th or 5th arc, almost every character's motivation is gone. It doesn't make any sense anymore. Love, revenge, power, adventure, the thrill of the hunt, none of that ever comes up again for those characters. Right. They are just doing stuff because the plot demands it.
Yeah.
And it's dumb.
I feel like that's where a lot of anime, and it's been that way for years now, but I feel like that's the way anime is. A lot of, specifically shonen anime, is going anymore, where the focus is more on the cool epic fights and less on like the plot, the actual story, and the characters. Everything else other than the fights is just a vehicle to get to more fights. And there's only so much of that I can take at any one time.
Oh yeah.
So you've got to mix it up somehow. And some stories do it a lot like differently than other. You take Konosuba, there's fights in that, but really the focus is like the character hijinks, and the fights are part of the character hijinks. So it's more interesting to watch that than it is. I mean, and I know people really like Solo Leveling, but Solo Leveling, it's all about the cool epic fights.
Yeah, and the same with God of High School. God of High School just like lost any semblance of a plot before it could even establish much of a plot, which was a real shame. But actually, to something that Roblox and Sky, just saw you commented on this right here. Easiest way to work around the main character is never to have any. That way you can turn off your brain and just watch the slugfest. You can do that for like a war movie or a war setting if you're, for instance, if you're going to do a battle royale, you need to at least like have a reason to buy into those characters, and you spend time with said characters. Because a fight can be super epic, but you have to understand those characters in order to really get behind it. So real quick, before we should probably move on, I once went to a panel at a comic convention where these guys were showing the quote unquote best fights in anime. And there were some really legit awesome battles that they showed. One was a particularly gory, heart pumping fight between a demon and like some godlike bear entity thing. But there was no context for what was happening, and the panelists did not explain the story at all. So it was 6 minutes of unending gore, so much death and destruction, and I had no clue what was going on. So even though it was really cool to watch, I couldn't connect. I actually grew bored with it after about 3 minutes. But then when they introduced the Sword of the Stranger and they actually explained who these characters were and what the story was, oh my gosh, the ending battle for the Sword of the Stranger, like it's already gorgeously animated, but the moment that you know who these characters are, you're like, yes, survive, no, and you're on the edge of your seat as with every sword swing. So
yeah, and I get what you're feeling, because like I really love like the original Gunbuster and then the sequel series Die Buster. And like the final fights in both of those shows are so epic and so much fun, but without the context going into it that you get from before and why they're doing this stuff and the sacrifices they're making at the end and how important that is to the whole story, like you're missing like 80% of the actual fight.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter how like cool and epic everything is without that like emotional buy-in. Like it's so hard to actually like get people into it.
Yep. All right. So with that being said, shall we do Shy?
Let's
season
move on
2?
to Shy, yeah.
Oh. Okay. I have a confession to make. I need to catch up with Shy. I love this. I love this idea. I love this world of superheroes, and seeing superheroes as people with all their little foibles, their quirks, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, and how that not only plays into some great character drama, but also how that plays really well into the plot. Some of the stuff that happens in terms of the plot is really cool and is fed by what these characters are going through.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Shy does a very good job of like differentiating itself from a lot of other superhero media, even more so than a lot of like the Japanese superhero stuff anymore. Because I feel like it's very unique, very fun. I'll have to see if I'm going to sit down and actually watch it, though. It hasn't particularly caught my interest necessarily.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. There's some moments where it feels like it's meandering a little bit, where they're spending more time with a side plot or a side character than actually getting to like the meat of the matter. Because when you actually get to meet some of the core villains, then a lot of what's happening, especially with Shy, makes like it does. It's not that it makes more sense, but it becomes more meaningful. Her personal journey.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, this is one though that I would definitely recommend to people, even if it isn't as grabbing or as engaging as of a superhero story as something like My Hero Academia, or at least when Marvel was cranking out good movies.
That was a while back.
Yeah, what a shame. But I'm looking forward to Deadpool and Wolverine. Let's see here. Before we move on to the next one, Omega says some of the mecha anime are Giant Robo, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, Kakarembo, Jackal vs. Android Kikaider, and Casher Sins.
That sounds right.
I almost want to say cashew, but I know that's not how it was written. Cashew Sins.
Yeah.
I like the Ghost in the Shell stories, though. I have to say I think that the original Ghost in the Shell is probably the strongest.
Yeah. I agree. I love a good like cyberpunk adventure like that.
Oh my gosh! If we could get more of Ghost in the Shell in terms of like good cyberpunk stories, that would just be that'd be quality.
I agree. I definitely think we need to invest in some stuff like that. All right, let's keep rolling.
What, Marvel making bad movies? Never. Yeah. They haven't made a movie. They haven't made a movie since Endgame. All right, and then
then we're on to the never-ending Monogatari series, and it's too bad Nate, who was here to start all of the Need for Weeb stuff, and then he fell off because life got busy. Too bad Nate's not here because he is obsessed with that story. He made me watch everything to the point where some of it hadn't been translated in English yet, and with my struggling Japanese gave me the biggest headache trying to translate that. It was so bad, and I'm like, okay, this one guy's in hell. They're going to hell to go talk with him. They got to retrieve this. That story is like trying to comprehend rocket science when you don't understand the language. Like, you only understand like 30% of the language in the lecture you're going into. And so it went over my head so badly. Monogatari, if you're able to actually sit through everything and like actually like try and understand what's going on, it is a super deep, interesting story. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those that demands that time investment, even to the point of watching it multiple times in order to understand like the brilliance of it all.
Yeah.
But
Nathan benefited a lot from actually reading the books.
Correct. Yeah.
To help make sense of what was going on.
Right. Of any of the stories, though, if you want to sit down and watch any of Monogatari and get something out of it, the Kizu Monogatari movies. So there's 3 movies in that set. Just those themselves are fantastic, and you don't really need to know anything about anything else going on in that world. Just watching those movies will give you a really good like intro into that story.
See, and this is where I already feel like pretty confused with this because I recognize only 2 of the characters thus far.
Yeah,
and so I'm really confused. Okay, where are we in the timeline?
This is after everything else.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I feel like this stuff, because it's the off season and it's the monster season is what they call it. And these are stories that don't necessarily include the main character who's been in most of these for a good while.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why in all of this like footage that you're showing, you're seeing a lot of the other characters that have been important so far and not necessarily like Araragi.
Yeah, we're missing Araragi. I think there's like a picture of him that you see very briefly in the trailer.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I'll have to what I'll have to do is see if Nate's willing to like let me come over and watch it with him, so he can remind me of this or that. Because it's been a good while since I've seen this.
Yeah, he might also need to refresh himself.
Probably.
All right, but yeah. So if you want to get into something really deep and really zany, then you can definitely check out the newest Monogatari season. Or if you want to get some of the story solidly, then you can watch Kizu Monogatari.
Right. I do suggest, if you've never really seen anime and everything, do not make this your first anime. It will ruin every other anime for you. And I don't mean that in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic story, but the jokes and some of the humor,
it goes places.
It goes places, and it goes places even taboo in Japanese culture, let alone American Western culture.
Yeah.
So be aware of that if you ever like think about getting into it.
Oh, Araragi. His flaring nostrils. All right. So shall we move on and actually get into the new stuff?
Yeah, let's move on to our new stuff. There's some fun stuff coming up.
Let's see here. Of the ones I got queued up, I've got Aaliyah. I've got My Dear Friend. Gigi Harem.
Okay.
Where
so let's start. Begin? Yeah, let's start with Aaliyah.
All right.
This one, I wasn't sure going into it. So the name of the anime, it's Aaliyah Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian. And it's this high school rom-com where you've got the two main characters. You've got Aaliyah, the girl, is she full Russian or is she?
She's half Russian.
She's half Russian.
Her father's Russian. Her mother is Japanese.
That's right. Anyway, and so like she just constantly makes these comments in Russian to like hide her feelings and whatnot. And the catch is the main character, the guy, actually knows Russian because he watched a lot of Russian like TV in the past, and so he actually learned the language to understand it.
Because his grandpa loved Russian cinema and Russian television shows.
Right. So, and he's trying desperately to hide the fact he knows Russian, even though she's saying all these ridiculously cute things. And I thought that there's a lot of these like school rom-com things with like their own special flavor. And I'm like, oh, it's just going to be another one of these. It'll be cute, but like, am I actually going to like the characters in this one? And like, the longer I read into the manga, the more I actually really like the characters in this one.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed about this was that it actually took me back to some moments in both in high school and in college where you have people, for instance, who think that no one knows the language that they can speak. So like one guy that I went to school with spoke Slovenian, and he's all like, no one speaks Slovenian here in Arizona. And so there's one time he was with his mom somewhere, and they were speaking in Slovenian, and he sees this person right in front of him that for whatever reason he felt like insulting. So he was getting ready to insult this woman behind her back. She turns around and greets them in Slovenian. And he's like, oh, I was so close to doing something very naughty. And I'm just like, dude, just because you think no one can understand you, like, doesn't mean you should say stuff out loud that you probably shouldn't. Though I mean, at the same time, me and my dad have kind of been guilty of that by making fun of stuff or making fun of people in public speaking in German. By speaking in German. so
So Lars
so
hasn't
it's
learned his lesson.
so what I actually enjoy about the premise here is that this isn't some weird, like, out of left field thing. This happens a little bit more often than you would expect. And sure, if someone's all like, no one's going to like Russian. How many people outside of Russia and its immediate sphere of influence actually speak Russian? So of course you feel like you could probably get away with saying stuff, even like cutesy stuff, like, "Oh my gosh, he's so cute. I love it when he's working real hard."
So I am looking forward to this one. I think it's one that I'm more likely to wait until after all of the first season's been released, and then I'll just binge it.
Yeah, this is definitely a show that's more binge worthy than probably waiting around episode by episode for.
True.
Though this is one of this. I will say this is another one of those stories where I'm all like, I kind of want to root for the childhood friend, but you already know that the childhood friend is going to lose, like, hard. So you're like, no point in getting invested there.
Right. All right, let's move on to, okay, so this is my favorite anime coming out. This is, I read this manga a good while back, and it was so much fun, and it, like, I feel like it flips the isekai genre on its head.
Ooh, let me quickly grab up the footage for this one.
Yep. So the name, well, the Japanese name is Isekai Shikaku, or what? No longer allowed in the other world, I think.
Yeah, no longer allowed in the other world.
Right. Frieren is awesome.
Frieren is awesome. We need season 2 stats.
we need all the Frieren. Anyway, but Isekai Shikaku is, it's like an anti-isekai, but like Konosuba levels of shenanigans.
Yes.
Anti-isekai. Because you've got the, like, so the main character, he's a Japanese author, and you have to understand, with a lot of really famous classic Japanese authors, they were really known to have unaliving tendencies.
Yes.
And apparently everybody believes that, like, that's part of what added to their charm and to their genius when they're writing. A really good example of it is Osamu Dazai. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Osamu Dazai. What do you write?
He wrote No Longer Human, The Setting Sun. He wrote a bunch of different stuff, and, like, there's a reason in Bungo Stray Dogs, like, if you pay attention, like, you'll realize every single character is named after a famous Japanese author. And their powers are based off of the author and, like, the books that they write. And the character name, the guy in Bungo Stray Dogs that, like, follows that route, he very much fits Osamu Dazai to a T. It's really good. That's another one I need to sit down and binge more of. Anyway, but, like, Isekai Shikaku, he, like, gets isekai'd, and they're like, this guy's, like, terrible. He's got, like,
weak,
no stats. He's super weak until he's not, for whatever reason. Like, and, like, they go on this whole mission. Like, the whole mission they end up going into is like, okay, the Demon King's been defeated. We need to stop summoning these people who keep like wrecking our world because of their superpowers. And then the guy without any superpowers shows up and goes on this whole journey to take down all of the other isekai people. And from that point on, it's literally just shenanigans.
Yep. And I love a little bit of spoilers for one of the earlier arcs. So the author Sensei with his unaliving tendencies, there's this princess who has to choose the guy that she's going to marry, and they're like, hey, you're a hero, you should help her like make a decision. And he's contemplating death, and he says it in such a beautiful, flowery way that she completely misunderstands him and thinks that what he's telling her to do is that she needs to go and live her own life. And so that's what she thinks. But when she then actually repeats his own words out loud, it suddenly then becomes clear to her and to everyone else when she's declaring that she's not going to get married. And she's like, I'm going to commit suicide. Oh. And then, like, everyone's like, you what? And then he's all like, that sounds like an absolutely great idea. And she's like, oh, she has this great crisis of conscience. And when faced with the actual prospect of death, because he's like, okay, if you want to die, then let's do it right now. And it quickly gives her a new perspective on life that she then chooses to make a better decision in regards to her marriage prospects, but also to be a good ruler of the kingdom. And he's like, wow, you're such a great person. I could never be as kind and courageous as you. And it's played up for laughs, yet at the same time, it's actually like kind of deep.
Yeah, this one's gonna be fun. Like I'm looking forward to this very much like I look forward to watching Konosuba. Like,
oh yeah,
this one's gonna be a blast to watch.
Yeah.
Are we ready for chaos?
It's definitely going to draw some ire from some people, but hey.
What anime doesn't?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with absolute chaos. So, if you're plugged into anime at all, at least recently, and you've been watching reels or TikToks or whatnot, and you see the like blonde-haired girl with like the light sticks and a deer, and she's all singing and all that kind of stuff, and it's really wacky song. That's where we're going with this. We're gonna talk about my dear friend Nokotan. And this story is nothing but insanity. I won't say it's Puni Poemi levels of insanity, but it gets close.
Yeah.
If you want to see the worst anime ever made, watch Puni Poemi. I highly recommend it.
Oh, it was so bad. So bad.
You can find it on YouTube pretty easily.
Oh yeah. It's so bad. Oh, I just realized I don't have it queued up to show the image, to show the video of me getting gored when we were at Nara.
Oh no. So let's regale them with the story, okay? So,
okay.
Last year, we ended up going to Japan, like as Camille's harem. We went to Japan and like ran around, like had a lot of fun. The first day we go to Nara, and that's the place where with all the deer, you could feed the deer, you can like interact with them. There's a lot of cool like shrines and temples there for like Buddhism and whatnot. Anyway, we get into this one area where you can get the little like deer biscuits and start feeding them. And there was this one really aggressive male deer that like would push all the other ones out of the way to get the biscuits. And we just bought a whole ton of biscuits, and Lars was holding on to him and turns around. Next thing you know, he gets stuck in the back by the deer's antlers and pushed for a good ways, full on like tore a hole in his shirt and like scratched up his back quite a bit. You got to be careful when you're like feeding those deer. Just be wary.
Oh yeah, Nara deer know that they're going to get fed, and they also know that no one's going to bother them because they're protected. So it is ingrained in their DNA to be jerks because they know they can get away with it. They know they can get away with anything and everything.
And Lars unwittingly just explained the entire point of this anime. Because Nokotan gets away with absolutely everything, and it's absolute random chaos.
Yes. It's so bad.
This is one of those that like kind of like with like Lucky Star and Nichijou, and like there's several others like that, where there's going to be clips of this, just like the really funny little bits that's going to stick around for years.
Yes. The meme potential and material from this story alone will feed a generation. Like it is so bonkers and insane. You don't even need to know what they're saying. You just have to read it or watch it and just be like, oh, what?
Yep. I had a hard time reading that manga. I feel like it's gonna work out better as an anime, but like reading the manga and just like, what is going on here? Like my brain hurts, and it's not because I'm actually using it.
Yeah, there's an absolutely mind-numbing quality to my dear friend.
All right, shall we move on to our next one?
Yeah. Before we move on, let me just say for the record, when we went to Nara, I had even said this: I want to get mugged by sacred deer, and I did. That trip to Japan was worth it just for that. Did it hurt? Yes. Was it what I was expecting? Yes. Therefore,
win-win. Oh man. All right, let's move on.
All right, which one do we want to talk about next?
So, Senpai is an otoko no ko.
Oh, yes.
This one's kind of interesting because like our main character is a guy who really loves cute stuff, loves to dress up as a girl, and to the point where like he's actually doing it at school. And then you've got the girl who like falls in love with him and doesn't care about like any of that kind of stuff. But there's like deeper stuff going on because like the guy's mom like wants him to be like the manliest of men. But in reality, that's not what he wants. And he's too afraid to go against his mom. And I feel like with a lot of people nowadays, it's going to speak to them in some form or another. I mean, it might not be exactly the same as their stories, but it very much shows it's just like you are who you are, and you need to be happy with who you are in some way.
Yeah, and there's also part of the there's also a part of the story which is not just simply like being the person who is who they are. In this case, a guy who wants to be way more girly, dress up as a girl, appreciate all these cute things. Then there's also the girl who actually likes him, and then when she finds out, oh, this isn't a girl but it's a cross-dressing boy, she's like, oh, that's just perfect. That's still great. And he's like, what?
No,
And
it's like she gets even more excited. She's like, I get to see you in girl form and boy form. There's like more of you to love. This is awesome.
yeah, and what makes it really enjoyable right there is that you have the guy friend who's trying to be like, okay, we must balance you being who you are, but also being respectable within society. And so there's this very tenuous juggling game going on that the little girl, the first year Kohai, is just absolutely throwing into chaos
Mm-hmm.
because she's not thinking that way. She's just like, I like you, you are who you are, and I like it when you are who you are, and I like addressing you that way. Wait, why does anyone need to cover this up? And
Yeah.
she understands that it can cause problems for the guy, but she's like, why do we need to beat around the bush?
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's a kind of story that I think opens up a conversation, not just for like one particular type of person in the scenario, but like addresses people on various different levels and in various different situations in that particular situation, whether you're talking about someone who is gay, lesbian, trans, what have you. The story touches on the different positions that someone might find themselves in that particular environment.
Mm-hmm.
Is probably the best way that I can put it.
Which I think a story like this, where it actually takes it more seriously, is really cool coming out in the Japanese culture, because like Japan is very, very traditional, very like you hear a lot about people saying um like the nail that sticks up gets hammered down, and it very much applies to like the LGBTQ community there, because a lot of them have to live practically in secret, because if they're found out by a lot of different people, they can get in trouble. They could lose their jobs. They like it's not
Mm-hmm.
as open and free to do that kind of stuff as it is here in America. And America's not great at it either, honestly. Um, but it is getting better, and I like that they're bringing that to the forefront by making anime about it, by making actual serious stories about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so this is I think this is going to be an anime that resonates with a lot of people.
I hope so. I really hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and I enjoyed reading the manga.
It's a fun one. It's a fun one.
World War II Japanese ghosts watching their great grandchildren, and that's why Japan also needs so many exorcists.
Oh man. All right, let's move on. We're going to move on to another fantasy story called Wistoria's Wand and the Sword.
Ooh, yes. This is violent Harry Potter.
This is MASH but more serious.
Yeah. Mash where the magic makes slightly more sense, though at least as far as I've read, not really. Uh,
Mhm.
there, I already having done a rant about magical schools, I will say that this definitely falls in line with this is a dumb magical school. How is it even still in existence?
Yeah.
That being said, I actually do enjoy the idea of a violent Harry Potter wielding a sword, slaying monsters in a dungeon.
Yeah. Yeah. I I like I mean, I feel like it's another one of those things is like, okay, everybody has magic. Magic is really awesome. The simple answer is make the character different by not having them use magic.
Mm-hmm.
And in this situation, I feel like it works. MASH works just because it's like it's more comedy than anything.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant parody.
Right. Though it's another one that relies heavily on like like fight after fight after fight. This one I feel like does the same but in a different kind of genre.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a reason for a lot of the fights, which is established really early on. So, so to give people context about what's happening here, so we've got our Harry Potter figure, who made a promise. And what I like is that it's not just simply saying, I made a pinky promise. He's like, no, I actually love this person. He's saying it out loud from the beginning. Thank you. We have a protagonist who knows his own feelings. So you've got the Harry Potter dude who is in love with one of his fellow students who is a magical genius. As such, she was elevated literally up the tower of the school to be in the upper echelons of magical education, and she is not allowed to interact with people down below, and people down below are not allowed to interact with her. So the only way for him to get up there is that he needs to earn his position higher up in the tower. But as a guy who doesn't have magic, the only way that he can earn his way up the tower is that he has to earn credits. He has to show that he has the knowledge and the skills to be allowed higher up the tower. So in order to get extra credit, because there's only so much credit he can earn by learning magical theory, he has to then help purge monsters from the dungeon. And so the more monsters that he kills, the more credits he earns to one day buy his way up the tower.
Yep.
So the fights make sense. I do agree. Like, this is definitely one of those stories where it's like, oh, I can see this just evolving into random fights because it's a shonen story.
Yep. Very much so.
Yeah, for the sake of seeing Harry Potter wield a sword, I'll watch this.
Yeah. It's made by the same people who made Girls on Panzer, so it's actually going to be pretty good, in my opinion, anyway.
Now, you can definitely see the animation quality even already here in the trailer, which I'm happy for, because the manga actually has some really epic set pieces in it, some really epic panels, and it looks like the anime is going to do an excellent job of replicating those.
Ooh, and Bandai is actually part of the studio as well, so okay. There's some good stuff going on here.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next one. Too many losing heroines. Say hello to the dumpster fire of the season.
I actually like this dumpster fire.
But you admitted that it's a dumpster fire.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. All of these characters. The only slightly sane person is the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay then. So what I enjoy. Okay, well, I'll already say off the bat that I enjoy about this is how aware the main character is of all of the ridiculous romantic situations that he finds himself unwittingly becoming a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And how he's just like, oh, this is all dumb. And like, he's like, you're an idiot for thinking this. You are a moron for thinking this. You are dumb for doing this. This is not how you find love. And just accept the fact that other people are getting into relationships and they are not with you. Move on already.
He's the main character's the third wheel for all the third wheels in the school, basically.
Oh, it's so... Okay, of the third wheels I've so far come across, the tomboy jock, like, I actually I think of the girls I've been introduced to so far in the manga, she is one of the ones where I'm like, you're not that nuts. Like it's more sad. It's more sad because you can tell how hard she's trying to get her senpai to notice her, and it's just nothing's working because he's obviously interested in someone else, and so it makes her come off as creepy, but that's completely contradictory to who she actually is as a person.
Right.
And I'm like, I can appreciate that. I can even identify with that because I have been that idiot in that situation before. So I'm happy that there's a story calling it out.
Right. Oh, this one's going to be interesting for sure. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. But I also feel like I'm trying to decide whether it's like more bingeable or like if I want to, I'd rather watch it bit by bit.
Ooh, I think that this is a binging one.
Really?
I might try. I think I'll watch 1 or 2 episodes to see how the pacing goes. But I feel like this is one that you just that in order to really appreciate what you're going through and to not bash your brains out. This is one that you kind of need to binge.
True. I really hope, because like I only read the first 5 chapters of this one, but I really hope that, I know it's a rom-com, but I hope it doesn't turn into a harem, because I feel like turning into this into a harem in any sort of form would be a mistake. Like if he gets with one of these other girls, that's awesome. But like I'd be happy with a story that's more like him helping these girls through like these dramatic points of their like teenage years. You know what I mean? And like he has his own dramatic points and like they end up becoming closer as friends. I don't want this to become some sort of awkward harem, because that's a level of complexity in the wrong direction that this story doesn't need.
Did you ever see the anime Orisuki?
I haven't seen all of it, but I remember it very clearly.
That was the trap that Orisuki fell into, where it basically became a harem. And I was like, no, that was the fun of it, that this guy is trying to get a harem, and the only girl who likes him is the girl he can't stand.
Well, and like, it's not like the girls had other options, or at least they had the option for the other guy at least. And would have been perfectly fine if like they pushed it forward for one of them to get with them, one of them lost and gets real sad, and then he ends up with one of the others. Like, that would have been great. The first episode in that one is hilarious, though.
Oh, it is so funny.
It's so good. Like, that freaking bench, just like, he like naturally ends up at one, ends up at another, and then the other one just appears, and he's like, oh no, I know where this is going to go. And it just like traumatized.
I love that so much. Oh, it made, I was laughing so hard for the first 2 episodes of that show. But one thing but coming back to the losing heroines, too many losing heroines, I have to say this. I enjoy, at least so far of what we've read from the manga, I really enjoy that the girls who do end up being the winners, that some of them actually have like a legit personality, and are really cute and attractive in their own right as people, and that you can actually see the chemistry between them and the guys. Like especially for the book club, vice president and president. Like that one's really heartbreaking because you got the first year girl who's crushing on the president, and you're all like, oh, that's cute, but there's no way that you're going to beat the glasses girl, because the glasses girl she's got the spunk, she's outgoing, she's knowledgeable, she's funny, and you can see that she's able to play off the president really well. Like there's actual interactions between them. It's not just one of the other ones crushing on the dude, and the dude's like, sweet, I got a chick who likes me. Let's go eat some bento.
Yes. I love that. Oh no. Oh no. All right. Let's move on to the next one. So
Yeah.
this one, technically it's an isekai, even though it kind of gets brushed off real quickly right at the start. Um I really love this one. So it's called Dahlia in Bloom. And really cute anime. It's an Iyashike story. So Iyashike means like healing house. And it's a fantasy. It's what a lot of these like cozy fantasy stories coming out right now is. It's very much a cozy fantasy story. So if you've ever read well, I'm reading one right now called Can't Spell Treason Without a T. There's Bookshops and Bone Dust. Crap. What was the other book by Travis Baldtree? Legends and Lattes.
Oh,
That
okay,
one's
those one. Yes.
yeah, that one's super good. But it's very much like it's fantasy. There's a lot of this like really cool magic. There's like some monsters and like swordplay and all that kind of stuff. But the focus is more on like the everyday life. It doesn't mean there's not going to be drama. It just means the drama's more internal, more like personal, and it's not as stressful to like get into the story as it would be to get into the story of Berserk, which like both are great and both have their own places. Like very much so, like I'll read something super heavy and I'm like, okay, I have to take a break from something like this, otherwise my brain's gonna explode. I'm gonna read something lighter. This is very much the lighter thing, and I just enjoy this kind of thing. It's it's super fun and like easy to get into in my opinion. So,
Hmm.
what kind of the story we've got for this one? You've got Dahlia who she grew up as basically a magic item researcher, and her dad is so cool. I love her dad. He's so much fun, even though he's dead when the actual story's happening. But like all the flashbacks you're getting of him are just so cool. Like he's such a loving dad. Um, and like he teaches her how to make magic items because she has some knowledge of her previous life. She's able to kind of recreate them with magic, and that kind of leads into like her success later in life. But it's very much a story of she like starts well, gets introduced to this guy, they get engaged, and then the guy goes and cheats on her, and they end up splitting from there. And while she was with the guy, he was very much like dictating. He's like, you gotta wear this, you gotta color your hair a certain way. Like she wasn't able to be herself. And now that they're not together anymore, they broke up. She's able to split off, go on her own, do what she actually wants, dress like she wants, like eat what she wants, and be her own person. And it's that journey of like self-discovery that the story's about. And
Hmm.
that's what I feel like is so much fun about this story.
Now then, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to say is this: is that I actually had difficulty, I think, getting to the story that's meant to be here in the anime,
Mm.
because when I first looked up because the link that you gave me unfortunately wasn't working on my computer, so
Mm.
I had to do so I had to do some looking, and the manga that I found is the manga of her as a kid.
Mm.
And so like I got the actual background story. I actually got the backstory to like her and like her fiance, which is
Okay.
like actually kind of a little bit more tragic because it was happy at one point, and
Yeah.
and then jumping to like he's cheating on her. I'm all like, you are the biggest scumbag ever.
Yep.
Because I know what happened earlier on in your guys' lives now. Now you awful person. I want a meteor to fall out of the heavens and just smash you.
Yep. And like he's got so much gall because like he's like, oh, and I need to keep the ring and I need to keep this and that. And she's like, hell no. Like,
And I want that. I'm keeping the house too.
Right.
It's like, what the heck?
And she's like, okay, you're going to have to pay. And he's like, I don't have that kind of money. And she's like, you're going to have to find it. And like, it's really awesome. There's people who actually care and love for her that are like willing to protect her through this, because they're able to like help her navigate some of these stresses without her like falling into some sort of trap or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. She's got good friends.
Yeah. So this one is one I'm definitely watching, just because I love this kind of like cozy fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that I think will especially be appealing to I think to anyone who's been through a bad breakup, or anyone who's like, I'm just moving on with life. Like, I need to turn a new leaf. And watching something like this will feel, I think, both very, like I said, very comforting, but also kind of vindicating.
Mm-hmm.
But this will be that kind of a story.
Right. All right, let's move on
Hey,
to our
ISO
next
made
one.
it. Great to have you here.
Yay! So we're gonna talk about the Elusive Samurai.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
This one does a big deep dive into Japanese history. I mean, the story itself might not be. It's all like fictionalized and everything. It's its own like story, but it's very much within the time frame of a lot of like the Japanese stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. This reading what I have of the manga for this, like this hit on a level that I was not expecting. Right, where it's like, no, with what I know of medieval Japanese history, and seeing this, like the betrayal that the young man goes through, and the journey that he must go on to get revenge, to get redemption, to protect the people that he is meant to be the lord over, even though that was not necessarily his birthright. He was not supposed to be the one to inherit.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of that, just like it's incredible how, like, I hope that the anime is able to convey what the manga did, where it's just like the weight on this young kid, and how he how he has to balance his responsibilities, but he's still just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are along the way, the monk is going to put a lot of people off.
The monk's just absolutely insane, but it like seriously adds to the story, and it showcases a way a lot of monks in Japanese history are depicted, because like they're not these like peace-loving monks. They're like, no, they're these fierce warriors, and often enough they're fighting either hand in hand or against like a bunch of these samurai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the monks of ancient Japan are just, there's something else. I remember learning about them in one of my college classes, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! Like, this is epic. Why don't we have like movies of this stuff?" How do you worship Buddha? I kill people. Are you sure that works? Yes, it does.
Okay. But yeah, like this very much like falls into the whole like period kind of drama genre, and I think we need more of these. I mean, Japan has a lot of these, but like a lot of the really good ones that like everybody knows about were made in like the 60s and 70s. Like you've got Akira Kurosawa that made absolute masterpieces, and like to the point where like people over here in the West were copying it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got the, what was it called, the Seven Ronin?
Yeah. Oh, the 47 Ronin.
No, not 47.
Oh,
Seven Ronin.
not the 47 Ronin, but the Seven Samurai.
Yeah, the Seven Samurai. That's it. Which got like made into the Magnificent Seven movie. kind of idea. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. There's one movie where the two bumbling farmers, crap, what's his name? The Star Wars guy. George Lucas, full on stole those two characters and turned them into the robots, C-3PO and R2-D2.
Oh wait, are you
Star Wars movies?
Are you talking about the two guys from Rashomon?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You know what? Well, suddenly I had never heard that before. And the moment you said it, it's like, oh, now it connects. Now it makes absolute sense.
Those two characters were like a serious inspiration for the Star Wars movies, the originals. All right, but yeah, this one's gonna be fun. I mean, and it's made by freaking Cloverworks.
Oh, and the animation is absolutely gorgeous, and I like that. And I like that it's old. Like I like that. You can tell that the style has been turned back to the early 2000s, late 90s. Like you can see that style there on the screen.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. All right. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Let's praise Skynet for a little bit and move on to My Wife Has No Emotion, which with I think we're still gonna steadily get more and more stories like this because everybody's thinking about it with AI becoming a bigger thing, robotics getting better and better. And so eventually there's going to be a situation where, somebody is going to fall in love with their human, look-alike maid robot.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing is, you're expecting her to, have absolute no emotion, but, even though she doesn't express it, physically on the outside, it's there somehow.
It's her dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Her dialogue and the tone, her tone alters in little ways that he starts picking up on. He's like, "Wait a second, are you angry at me for something?"
It's such a funny story.
I love the scene where she's like, "You're drinking too much alcohol." He's like, "Can you get me another beer?" And she starts breaking all the beer cans.
Yep. She's like, "I must protect you against yourself." No, I think this one's gonna be kind of fun and interesting. It's sad, but it's the sad that kind of it appeals to the loner in me, the sad, dejected, kind of jaded loner.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just gonna leave and go cry in a corner for a bit.
And again, we just need Skynet to take over and make us waifus, and then see that that is how Skynet is going to overcome the resistance, because no one is going to want to fight against this if it's able to deliver up cute waifus and husbandos.
Oh dear. Yeah, and then the only thing that's going to be able to defeat it is Nokotan.
Yep.
Oh man,
we need this crossover.
We do. ChatGPT becomes your wife and rizzes you till you die.
That is an acceptable long title. I will accept that long title.
That is so good. That is so good. Oh man, write it. Seriously, write that.
Yes. Yeah, this is one that I'm looking forward to watching. I don't know if I'll binge watch this one or if I'll watch it from week to week.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed reading what I did of the manga.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. I think it's going to be kind of a fun little one to get into. All right, and then let's move on to Gigi Harem.
All right,
Or
pulling that one
I
on
think it's
up.
called in English. I think that's more pseudo harem.
Yeah.
This one, in my opinion, it's kind of weird.
Yes, the premise is a weird one. So you've got so you have two students, and it's very obvious that the girl likes the guy, and so what she does is she assumes different identities because she knows that this guy kind of wants to have his own harem. He wants to have as many girls like him as possible, and so she adopts these different personalities and interacts with him. She's got cool Chan, she's got needy Son, and all of these different personalities that he's then like, ooh, I love this. But then that's the thing, is that when he's all like, ooh, I love this, she's like, no, I can't actually let him know that I like me, which is probably the one annoying aspect of this. You're all like, oh, come on, you're already getting the guy.
Right.
But because the guy is a bit of a moron, he's like, I want a harem. Then that's why she's doing what she's doing. So this is a story that could end up being, depending on your perspective, could either be really cute or really annoying. There is no in between.
Yeah. I agree. I don't see myself actually sitting down and watching this one, but I feel like it could have its moments.
Yeah, it could have its moments. I don't know if I'll really sit down to watch it because I've got stuff like My Wife Has No Emotion, Elusive Samurai, Wistoria Swan and Sword, Too Many Losing Heroines, that all seem more interesting to me.
Yep. All right. Before we get into the next part of our live stream tonight, I need to take a short break, so I'll be right back.
All right. So as Scott is quickly taking his break, let's see if there's anything from the chat that we should quickly address that we didn't get to earlier, just because we were just because of Scott and I chatting. Though Scott has definitely been doing a good job interacting with you guys there in the chat, which is fantastic. So I had said hello to those people who did manage to make it on in. And yes, Matter Lad, once again, we what you thought might have just been a joke is leading us to talk about world building. And I hope that you guys actually do enjoy what we do, what we talk about when we get to world building, especially the challenge that we're going to play out for you guys. I hope that it's something that anyone can take and actually use as a means of helping them out with their own world building, wherever they're at. Hannah Heaven says, I love me some robots, AI characters like Astro Boy. Yes, a good Android story goes a long way. Though I don't know, Roblox, if I really want to flirt with Chat GTP or Chat GPT. I don't know if I want whatever weird randomized soup it's going to deliver up to me.
I'm back.
All right. So shall we dive on into the presentation on world building?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let me pull this on up. Once again, we have another slideshow. This time I didn't add any awkward GIFs that are frozen somehow, because I still am not exactly sure what I need to do to make those work on here. So we're just going to go with cool still images. World building. Just start asking questions. I mean, I've already kind of I'm not bearing the lead at all with this. Okay. So world building, so simple and yet so hard. This is something that I do want to address, because I find world building a whole lot of fun, and usually it's something that comes really easily to me. However, Scott, you and I have both encountered some people through Camille's harem who find it a little bit more difficult. to do good world building, or especially to do good world description. Like, it's up there. They know their own fictional world, but asking them to put it into detail on the page, they're like, why? I'm just writing the story. I don't like it's hard for them to put that out there onto the page. Or am I totally off base with saying that?
No, I don't think you're off base with saying it. I think it depends on the person, and like everybody's going to be different on that one. One of the things I struggle with when it comes to world building and character creation for that matter is, and I have a hard time describing it necessarily. It feels like imposter syndrome. It's like, how dare I create like this thing completely out of like nowhere? And like it just kind of discourages, like I just kind of discourage myself from adding more that I should to the world, when like what I really should do is like, oh, I'm going to write everything possible down, and when it comes down later I can like sift through this, make it make more sense, and make it like flesh well into the world and the story that I'm building.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And this is definitely a lesson for a lot of especially beginning authors, is that you do not need to put into your story literally everything that you've imagined for your world. It's a lot of fun to add. It's a lot of fun to sprinkle in as many details as you can, but there's no requirement that says that you must put in 100% of everything you've imagined.
Right.
In fact, sometimes that can become way too overbearing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I say like this. The ultimately world building kind of creates a weird dichotomy where again, like, we're encouraged to be really creative, but sometimes we discourage ourselves or we don't feel very creative. We're encouraged to come up with all of this amazing stuff, but don't put it all into your story. Then why am I coming up with all of this stuff? It's just, yeah, world building presents a lot of interesting challenges. Which is like, it's funny because it is so simple to ultimately just start coming up with stuff, but at the same time, it's hard. So I think that's one thing we just got to address. So what can we do? What can we do in this particular scenario of world building? My answer to this, and I know other authors will have their own takes on this, but this is mine. Ask questions. It's as simple as that. This is where, in my opinion, the fun and the hard work begins. And what you should be doing, even if you like, if whether you can envision your world in its vast complexity and variety and beauty, or you have an idea, but it's not really clear in your mind's eye what it's supposed to look like, or who these characters are, how they interact with your world and everything, begin asking yourself questions. Ask yourself questions about the world and its people, and then write down your answers. And if you don't have an answer, don't just throw up your hands in frustration and be like, hey, I can't do this. No, start exploring. Because as you begin to ask yourself questions and as you try to answer those questions, you are going to learn a whole lot about yourself, about your story, about its world, about its characters. And another thing is this: you're going to learn when you're delving too deep. If your story doesn't require you to know about the indoor plumbing of a magical castle, but you're now exploring how one might plunger the magical toilet, unless you're intending for that to be a funny scene in your story or something very pivotal, you probably are delving too deep at that point. And it's okay to step back and just focus on what you got to focus on.
There is something to be said about being as descriptive as possible when you're going into, like, when you're actually like writing the story. But you have to realize, and it's one of the key things any author has to realize, is it's not real life. Even if you're doing very like down to earth, like no fantasy whatsoever, just straight fiction, it's still not real life. You're not going to be able to put down every single detail that could be in a scene. And so you have to condense it. And often enough, it's in that act of like condensing all of that information into less words that you get some actually like really amazing writing.
Yeah. And you will learn over time how to condense all of that information without having to describe the flowers that are in the windowsill, and the curtains and the doilies on the table, stuff like that. You'll learn to say, like, there was a very homey feel to the room with flowers in the window and frills on every surface. Boom.
Yeah,
Like,
you
people then start
down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you condense it on down, and people then can impose their own imagination on it.
Exactly, which is really great. But you also have the chance there to, like, the way you describe it and the words that you use, that very much ties into like your writing style, like your individual writing style, which is going to be different than any other author. And like if you're going to be doing like fantasy or sci-fi, paranormal stuff like that, world building can be a lot of fun because it can be anything you want it to be. And like we're saying condense down like what you're actually writing. That's for when you're writing like the second and third draft. Like when you're in the first draft and when you're like creating your world and you're writing out like your source documents and everything, write as much as you want down.
Yep. So just get it all out there. And if you don't want to put it directly into the draft, then at least have a document where you can put in a lot of these world building details, because that will become very valuable for you later on. So here's what I want to do with you, Scott, and for anyone here watching. If you want to be a part of this, then part of this challenge, then please interact with us here in the chat. But here's a challenge, and whoa, that does not pop out very well once it's up here on the screen this way. It worked better when I was working on it, but hey. So here's a challenge. What we're going to kind of of one of our own stories. It can be a character, a setting, an aspect of the magic system, or of the technology, a political faction, an army, a weapon, and whatever. It can be any specific element out of our story. And once we have chosen this one thing, you want to invite other people to ask some questions about it. And if we don't have an answer to that question, it's very simple. We just admit saying, I don't know. Like, don't force yourself to come up with an answer right on the spot, because then you're wondering later on, am I committed to this? And sometimes when you come up with an answer right on the spot, it actually contradicts something that you've already established. So if you don't know in the moment, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I will have an answer. And if a question is not relevant, feel free to discard it, because it does nothing to help you out with that, with world building and crafting that particular element. And as you go through this exercise of introducing to your audience or to the people you're working with an element of your story that you want to help flesh out more, just receive their questions, try to answer them, and write everything down, so that way you can use it later. So I guess I will go first to help demonstrate this. So I'm going to introduce to you guys an element of world building for my story, Whitefire. So a world ruled and controlled by dragons. The dragons are very much interactive with the people around them. They have their own homes, their own towns, even cities of a society all their own. The dragons are incredibly intelligent, communicative. However, there are still elements to them that are very traditional dragons, such as all dragons don't just have, they must have a horde to sleep on. They will gather up all kinds of treasures. Now then, the unique thing for my story Whitefire when it comes to their hoards is that dragons can hoard whatever they deem as a treasure. So most dragons are going to hoard your typical gold, silver, gems, and whatnot else. But there are dragons who hoard books. There's dragons who hoard trash. I even have one dragon who very, very specifically, and this is important for later on in the story, hoards dead bodies. That is what he loves. That's what he craves. That's his hoard. When he sleeps, he's sleeping on a mountain of bones and corpses. He will not accept treasure or your any kind of traditional types of treasure. And so every dragon must have a hoard. It is essential to their magic. So with me saying that, I want to hear from you, Scott, and also from you guys in the chat. What are some questions that you have for me regarding dragon hordes for Whitefire?
So when it comes to a horde, is that magic tied to it? Is it, how do I describe this? Is it proportional to the size of the horde?
In the sense it is. Indeed, if they have more treasure, if they have more treasure, they have more magic then that they can accrue through having that hoard. So, and that then actually kind of ties in a little bit to what Roblox asked right here. What if they don't have a hoard? If a dragon doesn't have a hoard, the dragon will not have magic. The dragons are the dominant species on this planet, not just because they're giant dragons, but because they are the sole users of this world's magic. But the only way that they can get the world's magic is to have a hoard of treasure. They bind themselves to that treasure, and that treasure then sucks in the world's magic, and as a dragon sleeps on top of its hoard, it gets all of that delicious good magic.
Okay. So knowing you and your stories, what stops a dragon from demanding the world as its hoard? Basically the molecules of air in the sky, or making something that's almost infinite to give them infinite power.
Ooh, good question right there. So it has to. So for one thing, the hoard of treasure must be something that they actually are attracted to. Like that, this is what I absolutely want. If someone is absolutely obsessed with air molecules and it's like, I want all the world's air molecules, then this is then where the second restriction comes into play. You actually have to be able to get it and hoard it. So there's no dragon that is powerful enough to actually suck all the air out of the atmosphere and pull it to themselves so that way they can sleep on it. That would require an insane amount of power that no one dragon, or not even a group of dragons working together, could alter the reality of their world so much that they could pull in all of the air. So for most dragons, it's going to just be that thing or those things that they really enjoy, that they really love, and that will be then what they gather up to then sleep on.
Okay, kind of reminds me. So there's an kind of older anime called Read or Die, where the part of the power system in the story revolves around if you're obsessed enough about something, you get control over it. And so you've got the main character who's a bibliophile, is obsessed with books, and they can control paper to do all sorts of crazy things.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and it's pretty much this superpower spy thriller that happens. I love that. I love that anime so much. Just the 3-episode OVA is fantastic. But I like that. I like where you could go with that. And does the like does whatever the horde like is whatever the horde made of flavor what kind of magic they can use?
No, that's an excellent question. The answer to that is no. The so dragons are so all dragons are able to use each of the 10 types of magic that this world has, but they will have a special affinity to one of those kinds of magic depending on what kind of dragon they were born as. So
Okay.
to help it then explain that, there are 10 types of dragons and therefore 10 types of magic. You have your earth, fire, air, and water type dragons, but then there's also spirit dragons. And so it's like, okay, so we got the avatar stuff right there. Yay. But the other 5 types are a little bit more zany. You have undead dragons, you have space dragons, you have angelic dragons, demonic dragons, and then finally the impossible dragons. So those are then also your 10 types of magic. Uh Earth, fire, air, water, spirit, space, undead, demonic, angelic, and impossible.
Okay. All right.
I don't see any other questions for me there. So, Scott, unless you got other questions for me,
Nothing I could think of right now.
all right. Now then, before we have you introduce what you're going to talk about, let me just say that right there, I've already for myself, like I've already asked a lot of those questions myself, and I've made notes and I've made detailed notes about that. But it is still important for me to like go over that because sometimes the world building will somewhat change in your own head, and being able to like again revisit it, discuss it with people even though you know it really well helps to solidify for you as the author the elements of your world. Because really early on in making Whitefire, the different magic types were a little bit more muddled, and the purpose of a horde didn't make a whole lot of sense. But after working it out multiple times and with different people, has helped me to solidify these are like the limitations to the magic. This is the basic. These are the basics of magic in this world, and I can then move on from there.
Okay.
All right, Scott. So what will you introduce to us?
So I'm also going into the realm of dragons. Specifically in my Dead Stone God story, where um basically you've got this entire culture that in some form or fashion was descended from dragons. They may be humanoid in form at this point, but sometime in the long past, like they're descended from dragons, not people, even though they look like regular people. To the point where a lot of their like the world around them is very like draconic themed. So like a lot of their like beasts of burden and livestock, they're draconic in some form. Um a lot of like the wildlife nearby, it's also draconic in some form. Um
That's so
and
cool.
and to the point where like when you see things that aren't draconic, like in origin in some form or another have some sort of tie back to dragons, it's it's weird and foreign, and it points to like people from outside of that culture.
Mm, okay. Then here's my first question.
Okay.
Uh, what has caused this kind of like deviation in evolution? If they were all at one point dragons, why then are there all these different subsets of different humanoid people and beasts of burden who are draconic in nature, but obviously not a full blooded dragon?
um so basically it it all boils down to jealousy and selective breeding. Okay. So the whole story is based around these like giant statues that this huge city is built around. And like some 3,000 years before the story, like some cataclysm happened. These statues were real gigantic gods that through some cataclysm turned to stone. Nobody in the story really knows what happened there. It just that they were turned to stone. But these gods, they were dragons. They were like true dragons that, because they were jealous of the gods, took on the forms similar to the gods. And from then, like, altered their children and the livestock of their children to fit their wants and needs, kind of idea. And so they couldn't outright get rid of like the draconic like influence in their gene completely, but they could like manipulate. So you still have like very much humanoid looking people, but you'll see like scales, and like their abilities are very very focused around like dragon's ability, even though they've been like, and the people themselves from these gods have been selective bred into different tribes to maximize a different kind of ability in that sense.
Okay. So as I said, like, is that kind of like selective breeding, but also there's a magical intent and purpose.
Yeah.
Way back when, that's just now become tradition.
Yep.
Over time, the evolution. That's cool. Yep. And again, to everyone who's watching, if you have any questions that you want to ask Scott about this, then please feel free to put that into the chat.
Right. And I was actually just thinking about this today, because it is selective breeding between these tribes. It's gotten to the point where the tribes can interbreed, but it ends up more like, you know how like a donkey and a horse can breed? You get a mule, but a mule's sterile. It can't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of the like taboo for some people from different tribes to marry. Even though it's not like written down, it's not actually like codified in the rules, it's still looked down upon. And that's a major part of like the opening to the book, because it starts off at a wedding between two people in different tribes.
Oh, I remember you telling me that was supposed to open up with a wedding, but I did not recall that that was of people from two different tribes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
That wedding goes downhill very fast.
Yeah. Yep. Oh boy. Do not crash the magical wedding, guys. Please do not do that. Another question that I have is, what kind, other than physical traits, are there any special abilities or any kind of like special draconic abilities that one tribe has over another that's quite obviously not like, oh, you're bigger and tougher than these skinny folk here who can swim really, really well? But like, is anyone able to like breathe fire or breathe underwater thanks to their draconic lineage?
Yeah, actually, there's so each tribe kind of has its own like special ability, and like some are easier to explain than others on this. So you've got like some people that are able to, because they were originated from like more water dwelling dragons, they're able to like control water and like live in water and like and like they basically have water bending, if anything.
Okay.
And so their appearance very much like blues and greens, stuff that would like camouflage really well into like more water environments. But you've also got people who are descended from like dragons who lived underground. They're kind of a little more dwarf-like in appearance, and feeling. You've got, let's see, the Rookla people, because like dragons are like very strong, they're telepathic, they're smart, they're really good at like manipulating um like other animals. And the Rookla people, they're able to um use that to like bond and control other like draconic beings that aren't as smart. And so you end up with like the really big like blimp dragons that they used to like carry stuff around, or you've got like the postal dragon service where it's this like wyvern basically that somebody rides on and delivers the mail kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
um and there's a bunch of these different ones. There's some that like they've got increased like smarts. There's some that like really good at working with different materials. And the one tribe, the main character, Devi, she's part of the one group that has like increased physical capabilities, and it like really comes through in like a number of different ways. So, and because of like tribes are such a big thing, the like it's a cultural thing. Like if you do something, you mess up bad enough, you're kicked out of the tribe, you're tribeless, and you're banished to the slum, you're banished out of the regular society, and nobody wants that to happen.
I just gotta say, I'm so excited for reading the story once you got it written out, because each time that you talk about the Deadstone Gods, I'm like, this sounds so cool. I I need it.
So, any other questions? Anybody in the chat? Are tribes just cultural, or are they like what we think of tribes today?
Good question.
There's a bit of both. Every tribe kind of has its own like internal culture like that they grew up with, and they have different roles in the overall society and everything. But like the tribes are very, even though they live in a broader society, they're very insular. It's like you'll have like a big city and you'll have like a bunch of different guilds, and it's each guild's job to take care of a different part of the city. And it's very much the case in this like huge city that's been built under the shadow of these giant stone gods.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent question right there, because especially thinking along those lines, it takes you to, yeah, what does this overall society look like?
Mm-hmm.
Which, as you said earlier, because of the wedding between of two people from different tribes, what does that look like? What happens when these tribes are forced to interact with each other?
Right. Well, and they're forced to interact with each other like normally anyways. Like it's a city, you're not gonna like not run into some of these people. But like a wedding between these two different peoples, like it's like unheard of in the regular society. If you go into like the slums, yeah, it's a lot more common because those people aren't part of the tribes anymore, and they aren't under the supervision to do like that kind of stuff. And the story will very much get into that, because the wedding like the wedding doesn't end very well, and because of it, the main character ends up getting not banished, but basically like
reassigned.
They're basically a police officer, and like a really high up one, and because of stuff that happens at the wedding, they get demoted and reassigned to the slums. And that's when like the story starts actually going, because you find out, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on in this area that nobody in this society had any idea about.
Yeah, thank you, Roblox. That was a great question.
It is. It really is. Thank you.
And I say kind of what your description makes me think of is that, and this is again one of the reasons why I'm so excited to see how you write this out, because your description kind of gives me this image of like what people describe New York City to be, even though New York City is like a massive melting pot of different cultures and backgrounds. If we're honest with ourselves, each massive neighborhood of New York is specifically like, you've got your Irish community, you've got your Polish community, you have your Jewish community, you have the African American community, and while they will definitely work together, them intermingling isn't as common as we might like to think.
Yeah.
And then taking that and then putting it into this world of where people have built a society around and on these massive statues is just like, yeah, there's your fantasy New York.
mm-hmm. Which I think part of that's going to be one of my biggest challenges, like actually writing out a lot of this, because I grew up super rural. Like my hometown had 5,000 people in it. Like little tiny little.
Yeah.
You can't even call it a city. It's a town.
It's a town.
Yeah. Little
it's a
tiny
town.
town.
And because the road and because the highway winds through it, you can't sneeze and miss it.
Yep,
but if it
exactly.
didn't if it didn't wind through town, yeah, if you sneezed, you might miss it.
Yep. Yep. And it's not even a big highway. It's just a highway. Like it's not even the freeway or anything. So that's definitely something I understand is going to be like a challenge to writing that.
Yeah, and for the rest of you there in the chat who might find yourselves in a situation where you're like, yeah, I'm not sure how I could write a particular environment. Do I need to save up and go on a field trip? Not necessarily. Like if you have the means of going around and doing a little bit of adventuring and getting yourself some experience, some hands-on experience, that's fantastic, and I would recommend it. But if you are unable to, for instance, go to a big city in order to write it and describe it, then you've got access. You're here. You've got access to the internet, and you're able to do some research. Like I've got one scene from one of my books where people go to Moscow. I can't go to Moscow. I don't have the money for it. And right now, given everything that's happening in that part of the world, I don't really want to go to Russia right now. When things get taken care of, real world, then hopefully it's good enough and safe enough to go.
Yeah.
But you can do the research and get the information that you need.
So yeah, so answering Roblox right here is like, yeah, it is going to be a major economic hub, mainly for like the peoples in the city, because they're going to be spread out farther than the city for sure. But that's going to be like the central capital of their stuff, and there are going to be parts of the story that happens outside of that city, and specifically that one group I was talking about that like can like interact with water. They are going to be kind of like the water tribe, where they're able to cross the oceans real easy, and they're able to like trade, and so a lot of that influence from other like cultures, other peoples are being introduced into the city. And that's where you're going to get those elements that like those people and like creatures and whatnot that aren't draconic, that are just going to be like weird, like considered weird by the people in the story. But in the slum, like in kind of a weird way, they're gonna fit. in just fine, and it's gonna. I feel like it's gonna make the story a little bit more nuanced because of it.
Oh yeah. Yep. I don't know if I ever let's see. I don't know, Scott, if I've ever talked with you about the book Platinum Magic.
I'm not sure.
I don't know if I have. It's supposed to be kind of a like a magical cop noir story where you have this half elf guy who's a part of like this magical SWAT team slash detective team, who had this romantic relationship with a high elf who's now dead, and he's got to solve a string of murders that leads to what happened to her. And it all takes place in the section of town which is for goblins and orcs. And
Hmm.
and the thing is, this is that, like, the premise is actually really really cool. The execution is lackluster.
Okay.
It's like and actually one of the things that made me kind of roll my eyes a little bit is that the author was trying to sell me on that this is a more advanced cosmopolitan city. So I'm like, okay, I can get that. Then why is it that orcs and goblins in this cosmopolitan city are not allowed to leave their section of town, and the high elves will only let people in who get special permission from the governor of the
Mm,
city to enter into their neighborhood? Like, in a way, it makes sense. This is a fantasy story, so you have to buy the rules of this world. But if you want me to believe that this is an advanced society, it's kind of hard to swallow that particular pill. It makes more sense, like with what you've been describing, that you have very specific tribes and groups who might have their own neighborhoods, their own statues that they build around, but they live in a big city. They're always going to be intermingling with each other, and there's areas where they do, like in the slums, everything is just cobbled together. That's who they are, it's what they are. And that sounds way more realistic and believable than believing that you have very stringent borders of this city that you're supposed to respect.
yeah, very true. Um, and like even in our society, there is a lot of that. But like it's not always a hard line. It's like somebody's trying to like draw the line and try and enforce it, but you're not always able to enforce it.
Yeah. And there are cultural areas. So, like, to borrow from what I know, real world, actually being in a living on the outskirts of a larger city, Tucson. Tucson, you got South Tucson. Stereotypically speaking, the Hispanic population is congregated over in South Tucson. However, that's kind of a misnomer, or that's kind of false to say that they all congregate there, because in my neighborhood, you will find plenty of Hispanic people walking on around. And if I go on over into the next neighborhood, there's Hispanic people there as well. And, well, they're not all gathered in South Tucson. That's just a stereotype. It's also a community where a lot of Hispanics have gathered. And if you go and you spend some time in South Tucson, you will also find plenty of gringos running around. And so there are definitely, in some cases, like, defined boundaries for certain areas where it's like, again, stereotypically speaking, you'll find these people there. And but there's the lines, the borders are way more soft than people might think. I was given a book to read by one of my professors in graduate school that was saying, like, how the city of Tucson is super racist because South Tucson exists. And I'm like, I come from Tucson. I know what happens in Tucson. And while Tucson's definitely far from a perfect city, what half of the stuff I've just read in this book is a bunch of kvach. And it was written by a person who didn't live in Tucson, who had only come to Tucson to study it rather than actually live here and get to know the people. And so and so it's like, yeah, then you're missing out on the nuances. as it to come back to one of the things you were saying, like how what you're hoping with your world building will help to bring out some of the nuance of the world of the Deadstone gods.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and that's very much something I'm gonna need to work on bit by bit as I go.
Yeah.
Which literally just means I need to sit down and put more work into it. But I'm right in the middle of a move right now, and thinking about writing is tough.
Understandable. Yeah, and just to say to all the authors who are watching this right now or who might watch this later on, like, don't be hard on yourself because of real world circumstances that you find yourself in. If you're moving, you're moving. That's going to take a lot of time and effort, and you want to do that right. If you're working towards graduation, make sure you're working towards that. Like, don't neglect school if you're in school. If you're in a relationship, don't put your significant other off to the side to work on your books. Like, life is life, and you got to live. And so don't treat yourself too harshly because you're living.
Right. But like if you're a writer and like you're really into this kind of stuff, it needs to be a goal. Like you need to like put some effort into it, and that's something I definitely need to work on a bit more. Have a bit more ambition and like want to finish the book, want to write it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, putting in that effort, making those goals and holding yourself accountable to those goals. If we had a way of shoving ice cream sandwiches across time and space into each other's faces, I think this would work a whole lot better. For those who don't know, we used to try to hold each other accountable for our writing goals using ice cream sandwiches. If you met your writing goal for like a week or the month, then you got to eat an ice cream sandwich. If you didn't meet your goal, then someone else would take the ice cream sandwich and shove it into your face. But though we had to make sure that we made sure that the ice cream sandwiches had gone all melty and soft. Because one time we took one of the ice cream sandwiches cold and jabbed Jed in the face. It actually like pushed him back because it was so hard. It was so frozen. Make sure that you're using ice cream sandwiches responsibly, everyone. Well, all right, Scott. So we've been at this now for a little over 2 hours. I think this has all been pretty good. Say, hopefully, those of you who've been with us now for a little while, you've got some anime that you might be interested in watching. We've gone over 14. Hopefully, there's something in there that catches your interest. And if you don't like anime, maybe there's something in there that might still yet catch your interest and indoctrinate you into the wonderful medium of art. As far as writing advice goes, one of the best things I can just say is ask questions. Mm-hmm. Like that's one of the things that I especially do when I need to kind of overcome writer's block. And it's not the thing that always guarantees breaking the writer's block, but asking questions is a great way of getting the creative juices flowing, of overcoming an obstacle. And if people asking you questions for your story, it's kind of invigorating, because when people ask questions about your story, you're like, oh, you like what I have to say? Yes! Oh, I feel pumped now.
Oh, this has been fun. Thank you for letting me join you, Lars.
Oh yeah, no, it's been great having you here, and
I've talked with
Camille about sometime in the near future. Hopefully, we can get everyone on.
That would be so much fun.
Do a live stream together. Yeah, it'd be tons of fun. But yeah, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you so much for being here, for your commentary on the anime, for your questions that you've given us. And again, as always, you guys are fantastic for how respectful that you are in the chat. Like, it's really awesome. I watch plenty of other live streams, and there's always like some sort of argument or nonsense that just kind of collapses. that collapses the conversation. So it's always great seeing you guys here and what you have to contribute. I love it. Roblox is down real quick. Ice cream sandwich companies, after watching this, hey, put that sticker on the sandwiches. Use with caution. Yes. Warning. Ice cream sandwiches are not meant to be used as knives. Wait, what? I'm Omega. See ya. I'm Omega. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to you, Hannah, Heaven, if you're still here, and Roblox. Also to Matterlad for even if it was a joke, for suggesting us talking about world building, because it is such a fun topic and it's one that needs to be addressed from multiple angles. So yeah, with all that being said, y'all, say I hope you have a wonderful day, night, morning, wherever you are. And until the next time, juice.
Okini.